Diamonds in the sunset, now your time has come.
All right, 5 minutes after 9 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in this Wednesday morning. Well, we'll forget the day it is, right? Rob, remember the story, The Emperor's New Clothes?
Yes.
Remember the fact that the Emperor was foolish and really wearing nothing at all was only pointed out by a child. It was one little child
Yeah.
who said the king is naked. Our next guest has a wonderful book to share with us. I want him to tell you about it. He is Rob White. He is a philosopher. It says so in his bio, and I know so from reading his book. He also is a wonderful storyteller, an inspirational speaker, a journalist. He, if you need some credentials to impress you, which is probably another myth that he's debunked along the way, credentials may not mean anything, but they might. He's written for the Huffington Post. He's an adjunct professor at Northeastern University in Boston, and his book is going to win you over. It's called And Then I Met Margaret. I'll let him tell you who Margaret is. I think I hinted at it just a moment ago. Stories of Personal Transformation. Wonderful, wonderful book. Then I Met Margaret. Rob White. Good morning, Rob.
Hello.
Hello. Can you hear me, Rob?
I now hear you. Yes, I do.
Okay,
Oh,
good.
good.
Good. Wow. I hope you heard the intro. Did you hear the intro?
Oh, you made me blush. I did.
Oh, good, good. Well, not that I made you blush, but that you heard it is what I'm saying. Good. Yeah, no, you've done a wonderful job, and you are indeed a philosopher. I love the fact that you look back at what you used to think and how your mind was changed about certain things. Where are you? Where are you calling from?
I'm right now in Boston.
You're in Boston, and you got that Boston accent too, don't you? Oh, you don't notice it, right? You don't notice it at all, right? There's another myth. I used to believe I had no accent, and then I moved to Florida, and I realized, oh, I do. I do have an accent after all. Tell us who is Margaret?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say about my accent. I have a home in California, and when people say you talk funny, I say I don't talk. Listen funny.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
So the book that I wrote, Then I Met Margaret, basically I become a guru spotter. What the book is about is that it's clear to me that life is always here to support us, always sending us the right and perfect person to demonstrate or express something that we need to know in the moment. And if we were really willing to have eye contact with life, we would find that in every moment when there's time for a transformational change, the right and perfect guru, and it could be a pet, could be a plant, the right and perfect guru comes to you to give you an insight. And the reason, and then I met Margaret, was so powerful for me was I was fairly shallow and very driven and obsessed with money. I still like money. It's not that I've turned my back on it. But in my 40s, and I had quit teaching after 17 years to become a millionaire. And a decade later, I'd made tens of millions in real estate, and I was in the restaurant business. Drove a fancy Ferrari and was Boston's most eligible bachelor and thought that's what the point of life was. And so I had a friend from my teaching days, an elementary school teacher, who wanted to bring her kids to the restaurant on a field trip. Well, I thought that was all about me, so I got dressed in my impeccable Armani suit and had the place impeccably cleaned. It was a wonderful 5-star restaurant. I've sold it since then. Rated in number 52 in the country by People magazine, so it was that popular. And I thought that we were meeting with these children was all about me. And they came, and I had the set up for cookies and everything. And before that, I gave them the chef's tour through the whole place. And then we sat down. And I was going to talk about what it takes to be a entrepreneur in life. Well, these kids are in the 3rd grade. They're not really they're looking at the squirrels that are peeking in at them. They all had their little name badges on.
Yeah.
So I asked them what they liked best about the tour, and most of them thought the big shiny stove and refrigerator were a lot of fun. Nobody had any questions beyond what kids that age would have. Well, when I said, okay, so have your cookies and everything, and if anybody has any comments or anything they want to make, just raise your hand. And this little girl shot her hand up. Oh, Mr. White, Mr. White. And I looked at her little name badge, and her name was Margaret. I said, yes, Margaret, thinking, okay, here's the entrepreneur I've been waiting for. She slid her chair out and stood up, and she fanned out her dress, and she said, do you like my new red dress? That moment,
That's funny.
in that moment, I got what an egocentric, arrogant, self-centered person I was. What a gift he was to me. And that was a transformational moment for me. I was stunned. And she had every right to think that the whole world was about her and her new red dress. And how about me, half a century later, still thinking the whole life was about me and my new red dress, the restaurant.
Oh, that's
Wow.
funny. You know what? Maybe she was. Maybe it was about you. Maybe in her bus ride, they said, who are we going to meet? Well, we're going to meet the most eligible bachelor. What does that mean?
Yeah.
Well, this is a guy who could marry you. Oh, hold on. I'm going to show him my dress.
That's cute. That response.
That is funny.
That is really an astute observation on your part, sir. That was a huge turning point for you.
Well, that one and the other story that really touches me deeply is when I went on a 10-week expedition to live at the Maasai village in Tanzania, and there was a Maasai mother who was considered a Maasai warrior, and that means she had a red and a yellow stripe on the right side of her forehead, tattooed on, which meant that she'd gone out into the jungle and confronted a wild beast and conquered it. And how they do that is up to them, but not many get that status. She had it. And she had a baby, too, a small child, 5, and then a little baby, 2 children, I mean, a small child, 5, and a little baby, 6 months, strapped to the front of her. And she was gardening every day, and her 5-year-old would go to what I'll call a daycare. But she never left the baby, and it all swollen up and breathing difficultly, and it had flies starting to gather around its eyes, which to them meant death is near. And that night they had this huge celebration, and they chanted all night, Sana wana yana wayo wana, Sana wana yana wayo wana. And this chant was to awake.
Uh-oh, you faded out. Are you still there? Oh, he's gone. Robbie, you still there? Can you hear us? Robbie,
Yes.
My baby.
Robbie,
There he is.
you're breaking up pretty bad right now. Are you by chance on a speakerphone?
I've just, no. Am I still breaking up?
Nope. Now you're fine. Okay. So if you're on a cell phone, I guess maybe you just kind of broke off a little bit. Go back to where you right after you did the chant is where we lost you. Now we lost you again. All right. I don't hear Rob at all.
There he is.
I wonder what's happening to our connection.
All right. Rob, are you on a landline or a cell phone?
No, I'm on a landline.
Really? Okay.
And I've just switched to another phone on the landline. Let's
Okay.
hope this doesn't give us the problem.
Okay.
I'm for that. Although there's always a reason for everything. We'll figure that out.
The philosopher in you. And by the way, the storyteller in you just was illustrated by the fact that you not only did the chant, but you probably did it accurately, I'm guessing. Am I right?
I did do it accurately.
Wow.
And so that next morning, I got up at 4. She came out from her grass hut. They make their own huts out of cow dung. It's very primitive, and yet there's such an integrity to their entire village. And she went out by herself into a pasture, and I followed her 100 yards behind, being told not to interrupt or interfere at all. And she made a little nest, and she placed her baby in the nest. And she sat next to it and put her hand on its heart and waited for the sun to start to rise. And as the sun started to rise and the morning had broke, all of a sudden there was so much chatter in the dense forest probably 50 yards out from her. Birds and animals and squealings and all kinds of noise. The jungle was waking up. She stood up. She spread her arms out and she looked toward the sun. And she chanted that chant. Sana wana yana wayo wana. Sana wana yana wayo wana. Please take the living spirit from my baby, relieve it of its pain. They also believe that we are all flesh that should be eaten by other beings on the planet, just as they eat the animals. They felt the animals should eat them. So they really did, but they do believe that once the soul is gone, it is free. It's now playing again with the sun god, and the flesh is just meat for other beings on the planet. Well, out came a giraffe, lumbering out, hearing her chant, and looked down oddly and trotted off. It was the most odd thing I'd seen. And then a monkey came out with her baby in tow, and looked too, and chittered and jumped a little bit nervously and went off. And then out came a hyena, a 150-pound male hyena, and it was clear he was hungry, and that's his breakfast. His purple tongue was hanging out of his mouth, dripping saliva, and he started making this weird snorting noise, which any Maasai would know. There's in the jungle near us, there is a hyena, and it's time to get away. Well, he wanted her to drop her baby and run. She totally ignored him. She continued to look up at the sun, chanting her chant. Please take the life force energy from my baby. Relieve it of its pain. The baby is in the nest in front of her. She's standing arms apart, looking up at the sun as the hyena started skulking in and growling and making this whining noise. Very weird. I didn't know they could make noises like that. He'd gotten within 10 yards of her. She still did not acknowledge his existence. And then he fell to his belly and started crawling forward, almost begging, almost as though he felt her incredible power, that he had no chance against this power. That's what I'm imagining it was. It was like a movie scene. And the whole entire jungle was quiet at that moment. And all of a sudden, the little baby's belly went up, went down, and it didn't go up again. And the Maasai mother looked down at her baby, looked up at the sun god, bowed to the sun god. She got down and picked up her baby, kissed it on its forehead, hugged it to her chest. Then she looked at the hyena for the first time, and the hyena sat up like a well-trained German shepherd. She bowed to the hyena for his patience, laid the baby back in the nest, turned around, and went back to the village. That was an everyday, ordinary, unassuming guru who taught me the most incredible lesson I've ever learned about power. Not sex, not education, not religion, not political affiliation, not age, not indoctrination, nothing but pure living spirit. She had taken command of the entire universe. Until she had what she wanted, she had a conviction that she would stand firm, and nothing could stop her. That's the greatest guru story I've ever had.
Gosh.
Wow. Wow. So many different emotions wrapped up in that story. That story's in the book, right?
It's in the book, and that's the story that actually motivated me to write the book, because I think, yes, I understand most of us don't have that grand opportunity, but I think all of us have wonderful gurus ever coming to us sent by life. The 12-year-old taught me to humble up and understand that I'm part of this magnificent human village called humanity. Yeah. And that one taught me stop being so self-centered and arrogant and think just because I went to some Ivy League college and lived in a very intellectual community that made me superior to others. So those are the two grandest.
Yeah, wonderful. The book is called And Then I Met Margaret. Our guest, wonderful storyteller, and that storytelling ability he has audibly is also obvious in print as well. The book written by Rob White, our guest. I wanted to tell you something. When we see like missionaries or anybody going to poorer countries, third world countries, etc., I've often thought, I wonder how you do that without feeling arrogant to a certain extent. I mean, hi, I'm here because I'm better than you and I'm going to show you a better way of life. That has to be part of what you do. But if you've got any insight at all into yourself, you say, well, I don't want to be arrogant. I want to be here. I really want to help them. And then, and you bring up this paradox in your book, as a matter of fact, you say, well, am I here for them or am I here for me? Well, I'm going to get something out of this because I'm going to feel good about what I'm doing for them, and whether it's a third world country or your neighbor. And it is a paradox, but I don't think it should stop us from doing good things.
That's well spoken. Norman Vincent Peale, who was a great philosopher and writer, and he was a minister of the Marble Collegiate Church, had gone to Hawaii with that attitude you speak of, wanting to help Hawaiian villages back years ago. We're talking 50 years ago. And back then they believed that their chief was God, and he came to introduce Jesus. And the chief let him introduce Jesus for 10 full days and speak of Jesus. And Norman Vincent Peale couldn't understand why the chief didn't interfere, because the one person who was going to lose if they bought his belief in God as Jesus is the chief. He'd no longer be God. He'd just be the chief. Well, at the end of the 10 days, Norman Vincent Peale felt really good about himself and the good job he did, and the chief said, let's have a celebration tonight. And they did. And the chief built a long stream of fire. And he then took off his sandals and walked over the fire. He firewalked successfully. And then he turned and he looked at Norman Vincent Peale and he said to Norman, you now take off your shoes. If Jesus is God, you will not burn your feet. And of course, Norman had no intentions of walking over the coal, and that was the end of the story. He left. They didn't believe in Jesus. They believed in their chief.
Oh, wow. Oh, I had never heard that.
Yeah, Norman has that in his biography. With the point of that being, Norman Vincent Peale later realized also he had gone with arrogance. I have the ultimate God to tell you about, and that arrogance showed up. And the chief, being much wiser than Norman, much older and wiser, saw the arrogance and already knew how he would defeat him. So, yeah, I found the Maasai tribe, what they have we don't, an integrity. They are their word. They depend on their word to survive. If they say something, they meant it. They support each other. There's no gossip. There's no slandering. There's no harsh judging. It's something we've lost in our civilization. It's something they have, so it's a trade-off.
It's interesting to read somebody else's life lessons, which is kind of what you're allowing us to do. You're exposing yourself maybe more than a model who strips naked for Playboy magazine exposes herself. You've really allowed us to see you, and you've even allowed us to see your shortcomings or your former shortcomings, and we all have them. So it's not just you, but you show them, and I've often thought, not that I can profess to know the meaning of life, but I've often thought that maybe the meaning of life is to learn these things, whether we learn them by living them or learn them through reading about somebody else living them, as you're allowing us to do. And then the only other thing I wanted to say about that thought is that whenever somebody brings up reincarnation, now I know this is a controversial topic, and I don't know. I mean, how would I know if we reincarnate? But if there is an opportunity to be born again, I mean, in physical, and have a new mom, and it would be such a shame that you don't keep that stuff. Like you go through this whole life learning these things, and you got to start all over again.
Yeah.
Well, Albert Einstein, who believed in reincarnation, said, we drink from the cup of forgetfulness every time we're born again. And that's why we don't. Remember, that's part of the game. But our consciousness comes with our past lives, and we advance. But yeah, I do believe in reincarnation, and I don't push it because I have no proof, because I drink from the cup of forgetfulness, so I can't prove to you. You two folks down there in Ocala, my sister lives down there. You're good folks. I love this conversation you're having on your radio show and your sincerity. I would like to say before we do, I'm now opening a new website. My website is robwhitemedia.com. My new one is ordinarygurus.com, and I'm offering a $5,000 prize, first place, $2,500 second, and $1,500 third place for folks who send in a story about an ordinary guru that caused a transformational change in their life.
Oh wow! Wow, how many of us have somebody like that? There's so many that we could name. We do this show live, and our listeners often will call in with a question or a comment. Would you like to go to the phones?
Sure.
Okay. Rob White again is our guest. His book is And Then I Met Margaret. It is a very, very well-written philosophical look at life. And some of the stories that Rob has told on the air here today are in the book. Good morning. Thank you for being patient with us. You're on the air with Rob White.
Oh, good morning, Mr. White. Rob, so enjoy listening to you. I thank you. I thank Margaret. I thank you for all the wonderfulness you're sharing with us, and the idea that arrogance is truly evil, and it's our responsibility, right, to recognize it and to do all we can to be the opposite of that, and only in that can we be open and receptive to all the wonderfulness and knowledge and information. And I just love so much what you've shared, and I so look forward to getting your book and checking out your website. I just want to thank you so very much. You're touching so many people.
What's your name?
It's Lauren.
Oh, hi, Lauren. Wow, that was sincere. I would love to have put that in my intro of my book. You have a book inside of you, speaking and thinking that way. And indeed, arrogance is evil. Evil being that which spirals downward into separation and toward scarcity of all that's good and beautiful. I don't think of evil as something where there's a God that punishes us. Evil is something where we punish ourselves. And so indeed, I've never called arrogance evil, but with my definition of evil, the one I use, it is. It separates us from others. It makes us feel apart from and gives us a feeling of false superiority, which always comes from insecurity. So thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you.
So thank you. Thank you.
You have an extreme air of positiveness about you, sir, and so many people go through life and then they have the self-doubt and they think they can never be anything better than what they are at the moment. But you're giving the people the courage to see that that's not true.
Well, thank you. You know, I wasn't like this. I had to recreate myself anew. I was cynical. I was a weekend alcoholic. I was a gossiper. I was quick to condemn, and I was very unhappy. And I had to surrender all of that and believe that I truly am a rich and majestic child of universal mind and destined to win at whatever I set my mind to. And that's where Margaret and the Maasai Mother and all the other 21 stories in my book point to those who helped me to turn my entire attitude, thus my entire life around. And because those habits were so strong in me for 5 decades, I didn't really take the time to change my mind and change my life till I became 50. Until then, those that have been so entrenched, I still have to remind myself over and over again, Rob, you're marvelously made and destined to win at whatever you set your mind to. And everyone is marvelously made. If I think I'm marvelously made, but
That's
you're
right.
not.
That's right.
But it's not that. I get that as long as I can see you, Larry, and you, Robin, as marvelously made, then I feel secure that I'm marvelously made. And the moment I start thinking maybe you're a little less marvelous than I thought, I'm starting to think I'm a little less marvelous, and thus the downward spiral.
It's absolutely true, and always needs to be reminded. We're all capable of letting that understanding slip now and then. And I wish our world leaders would recognize that. You know, they are ruining us.
Yes.
I don't know how they got where they are, but somebody needs to slap them a few times and tell them the same thing you just told us, Rob. I have one copy of this wonderful book called And Then I Met Margaret. I would like to give it away. The rest of us have to go buy it. I want Rob to remind us of the websites he gave us earlier. Rob, go ahead and tell us the websites again, and also is the book on Amazon, etc., all the other places?
It is. As a matter of fact, it's on Amazon.com, and it just became an international bestseller last week. And for some reason, Australia loves the book. I don't know why, but it's selling like hotcakes in Australia. I have two websites. One is robwhitemedia.com. That's my website, and I have lots of wonderful tips and insights going on there daily and blogs. And then the new website coming up tomorrow, Thursday, where you can win $5,000 if you submit a story and win, is ordinarygurus, plural.com. Ordinarygurus.com.
All right, ordinarygurus.com. We'll be checking it out. Thank you for being on the air with us today, and you're welcome back. Is this a first book for you, by the way? No.
It's not. It's my fourth book, but my first big hit.
Oh, okay.
Thank you for having me. You guys are great. I appreciate you.
And thank you. I think we what's the word? Reciprocate the thought,
Yes.
or whatever.
Definitely.
Mutual admiration, I guess, is what we say here. Yeah, thank you so much, Rob. We will take a little break. We'll be right back.
The weather is brought to you by myfwc.com. Life jackets save lives. We're in Florida. Clouds giving way to some sunshine today with a high of 75 to 79. For tonight, partly cloudy skies, lows ranging from 50 at a few inland spots to 58 along the coast.